Welcome to an exhilarating exploration of the intricate web of international affairs. In this captivating YouTube video, Destiny will delve into rebutting leftists like Kulinski about a popular talking point.
Layers of abstraction removed from individual agents, and there's a lot of competing, like, that's a hard thing too. There's a lot of competing moral systems, and honestly, the biggest issue, I had an international guy that emailed me this once, international studies or whatever, that was really upset. I'm not going to be able to summarize his arguments very well because I'm just not well studied in this area, but some guy emailed me and he said that I should spend more time studying international law because one of the biggest things that triggered this guy was when people like Kulinski or people on the right or the left say things like Bush should be tried for war crimes, Obama should be tried for war crimes. He said that the answer that I should, or the question I should always ask is, who has the jurisdiction to hold them accountable for that? And he said that people always demand that people get held accountable for stuff or get held on trial for war crimes, blah, blah, blah. But there is no like international tribunal or council that even exists to have the jurisdiction to hear these types of charges. Like, it just doesn't make sense to say, try somebody for war crimes. There is no international community with that level of jurisdiction and that level of power vested in it that could even be able to begin to have those types of investigations. And that most of those questions are just kind of like meaningless moral grandstanding because it doesn't mean anything. So maybe that would be a question I think of. Jurisdiction is very difficult when you have competing countries because now you can't appeal to a common law system. This is why when we make international treaties, our international trade agreements, it's why we usually try to specify some third-party court that can resolve disputes. But I mean, at the end of the day, you could leave, right? Like the World Trade Organization, right? The WTO has like third-party arbitration and their court's set up for that. But like at the end of the day, somebody could be like, okay, well, this, I'm just going to leave, this thing. And it's like, well, that's their own country. You can't force them, but yeah. So that's when you start talking about competing legal systems in different countries, it gets very, very, very hard to hold people accountable,
Yeah, I think in terms of moral justice, I think that's a pretty big human failure is that we have no way of holding other people or other like the top tier of actors accountable for things.
The best you can really do is like really, really high levels of integration and then punish based on the integration. Like that's like really all you can do at the end of the day. Like if there's a country that's like super reliant on us for like trade and stuff, and we have like a ton of ties to them, like threatening to pull out of that or threatening to sanction them on that level, those are like the biggest harms you can do,
That's so crazy though. I don't know. It's hard to feel satisfied with that sort of level of justice for some of these things.
Yeah, but I mean that's international affairs. I mean, what are you gonna do? Very, very, very rarely when you start running into competing systems like that are you going to find like a satisfactory answer. Like there's ongoing popular conflict that there's not a satisfactory answer for, right? How do you resolve the Israeli-Palestinian disagreement? Like there's everything is super unsatisfying there. Do you split the country between Jews and Arabs and then Jews theoretically lose the last safe country for them on the planet? Do you try to be fair to the Palestinians and give them land that they argue they were promised? And have that outcome? Or do you say like, well, nope, the Jews get to control of this, and then now you just deal with the habitual encroachment of them in the West Bank, building more and more settlements, taking more and more parts of Jerusalem, slowly pushing the Palestinians out, constantly going to war with their neighbors. Like, it's like some things just don't have like easy solutions, unfortunately. But I mean, that's international affairs. Like, yeah, it's not like we have a common like system of law that we can appeal to and say, oh, look, we should just do this. Unfortunately.
Yep. All right. I think we reached the end of this one. Have a good one.
Love you. Be careful. Okay, yeah, so for all the people that keep saying, oh, there are international blah, 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 blah. No, there's not. The United States is not ever going to subject itself to rulings of, like, war crimes from some international tribunal. It's just not going to do that. Why would we? We have absolutely no incentive to. We have every reason not to. The United States will never like be held or have a hearing at any of those courts relating to that. It's just not going to happen. Yeah. Why shouldn't they? Well, I mean, why should or shouldn't they? You can make arguments. But I'm saying realistically on paper, they probably wouldn't. Wouldn't Russia have an incentive though? I don't know. It depends on how heavily sanctioned they are. We've like sanctioned the fuck out of Russia in a lot of different ways. At some point, you're going to lose the ability to to sanction anything else. You also have to be careful, too, about how political you get over certain things. Like, I don't know if it's still being talked about, but at one point in time, I'm pretty sure there were international talks about abandoning the SWIFT system because the United States tried to sanction parts of Russia, or did sanction parts of Russia from SWIFT. And so people are thinking, well, hold on, if we're going to be weaponizing financial transactions, then maybe then maybe, you know, maybe we don't want to be a part of this, you know. Ultimately, at the end of the day, anything can be weaponized, but you asked for such an institution, and there is, but and like any institution, as long as other countries support it, the U.S. is not. So they're yeah. But I'm saying like you could hold states accountable in the United States because ultimately they answer to the federal government, and they don't have the power to resist. They don't have the political will to resist, right? Like yeah. But holding countries accountable, at least a country like the United States, is very, 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 very hard. We can't even hold Russia accountable, right? Who's gonna?
In the arena of international affairs, the Herculean task of meting out justice and holding individuals and nations accountable for their actions presents an assemblage of insurmountable challenges. The labyrinthine complexities of jurisdiction, clashing legal systems, and moral paradigms weave a tapestry of perplexity, further complicating the pursuit of truth and retribution. This audacious treatise scrutinized the arduous nature of achieving accountability sans reference to specific sources, casting a glaring spotlight on the stark limitations of extant mechanisms and the want of a universal legal framework. Foremost among these quandaries is the egregious dearth of a global institution vested with unfettered jurisdiction to scrutinize and prosecute individuals for war crimes. This vexing absence detracts from the gravity of calls for accountability, reducing them to vacuous moral posturing bereft of substantive consequence. In the glaring absence of an international tribunal or council fortified with the wherewithal to hold transgressors answerable for war crimes, as alluded to in this cerebral opus, a Sisyphean struggle emerges to ascertain jurisdiction and untangle the veracity of allegations. The dearth of a suitable authority to preside over and adjudicate such weighty matters underscores the labyrinthine conundrum confronting the global community. The intricacies of jurisdiction acquire a manifold layer of perplexity when a multitude of nations, each governed by divergent legal frameworks, become embroiled in conflicts. Unlike their domestic counterparts, ensconced within a cocoon of common law, international disputes find themselves ensnared in a bewildering quagmire devoid of a cohesive legal fabric, rendering the determination of appropriate jurisdictions for trials and hearings an onerous endeavor. To ostensibly surmount these jurisdictional conundrums, international treaties and trade agreements venture to address the imbroglio by delineating third-party courts as redressal forums for dispute resolution. However, the efficacy of these mechanisms remains circumscribed, as nations maintain the prerogative to withdraw from or brazenly disregard the decisions rendered by such bodies. The quest for justice and accountability within the domain of international affairs gravitates towards punitive measures, epitomized by the deployment of economic sanctions and the severing of diplomatic ties. Albeit capable of inflicting considerable reverberations, these actions often fall short of delivering a holistic and gratifying resolution to the myriad complexities at hand. A poignant exemplification of the conundrum lies in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, a crucible of strife defying facile resolutions within the domain of international affairs. The absence of a harmonious legal system to arbitrate this long-standing imbroglio leaves policymakers grappling with an unsatisfactory panoply of outcomes, grappling for a semblance of justice. The limitations that bedevil the quest for holding top-tier actors accountable on the international stage expose an egregious shortcoming in the realm of moral justice. The inescapable absence of a universal system that engenders and ensures accountability casts an ominous pall over the challenges faced by the global society in their unyielding pursuit of retribution. Punitive measures, most conspicuously manifest in the form of economic sanctions, emerge as the principal recourse for nations seeking to hold their counterparts accountable. However, these measures occasionally fall short of yielding desired outcomes, leaving justice seekers disillusioned and disenchanted. The conspicuous reluctance of powerful nations, including the United States, to submit themselves to the purview of international tribunals underscores the vertiginous complexities inherent in achieving accountability. Lacking incentives and wary of compromising their political capital, these nations wield their formidable clout, erecting formidable barriers to their own potential culpability. The predicament of accountability extends beyond the contours of the United States, as evinced by the case of Russia. The impositions of stringent sanctions by nations seeking to hold them answerable may inadvertently impede further action, accentuating the delicate tightrope traversed in international relations and the ineluctable consequences of political machinations. Institutional frameworks, albeit existing to address accountability, invariably teeter on the fulcrum of support and cooperation from the international community. Their efficacy, like that of any institution, hinges upon the robust backing they receive from the global fraternity. In the final analysis, the labyrinthine challenges that obfuscate the task of holding individuals and nations accountable within the realm of international affairs defy facile resolutions. The yawning chasm of a global jurisdiction, the interplay of competing legal systems, and the limitations of punitive measures coalesce to engender an inhospitable terrain for the attainment of justice. The absence of a universal legal framework further compounds the complexities, leaving numerous issues mired in unsatisfying outcomes.